And the book that I'll be introducing is called Revisioning Stalin and Stalinism. And this is an edited collection brought out with great skill by my colleague here at Cardiff, James Ryan, who is Senior Lecturer in Modern European History, and more specifically Russian history here at Cardiff. And he brought this out. This is a co-edited book with Susan Grant, who's reader in Modern European History at Liverpool John Moores. The book is still in press with Bloomsbury Academic, so regrettably I can't pick up a live copy and show you. But if you have a look at the link on the Bloomsbury Academic website, you'll see that it's a fresh, attractively presented book. It's got a cover with an image in color of Stalin, who is donning a military uniform. He's at his what can I say, socialist realist best, surrounded by flowers, being adoringly embraced by a little girl with blonde plaits, and Stalin, the great father, is holding her safe and secure in his arms. And as this image strikingly hints, although the edited collection at no point avoids or sidesteps the enormous legacy and notorious legacy of Stalin's crimes, it nevertheless takes very seriously its own self-appointed task to move beyond the tired old stereotypes and to begin to explore what it calls in its subtitle, the complexities, contradictions, and controversies, both in Stalin and in Stalinism. So what's been brought together in this volume is a sort of Festschrift to mark the retirement of Professor Jeffrey Roberts, a doyen of Soviet history, from University College Cork, which is somewhere James was at once a student. And what James Ryan and Susan Grant have done is to bring together an eclectic and impressive collection of contributors at all stages of career, including some very big names. So among the big guns, we have Jeffrey Roberts himself, Christopher Reid, and to my great pleasure, a scholar who I remember from her past life as a French religious historian, Judith Devlin. I think we all know from experience that edited collections can be disappointing, often in the unevenness of the quality of the chapters or in the lack of overall coherence. But this volume really stands out as an exception on both counts. I would also want to single out for praise the introduction to the volume, which is jointly written by James and Susan, and which I have to say is one of the best introductions of its kind which I've read, in that it manages to avoid both specialist academic jargon and also those awkward segues which are so common in conference proceedings. And what it really offers is a thoughtful survey, critique of the existing historiography, which is of course enormous. I mean, the very thought of having to try and master the entire historiography of Stalinism is quite a task. And it does so with a real clarity and engaging tone, which would make this, for example, just thinking practically here, would make an excellent set text reading for undergraduate students, for example. It's divided into three main parts, the whole book, so all the chapters are subsumed within these three themes. The first section looks at Stalin as leader, as statesman, albeit a controversial leader, rather than as monster in the traditional way. The second section challenges simplistic ideas of the cult of personality as limited to Stalin, or for that matter, Hitler or other so-called totalitarian leaders, but rather explores a much fuller range of leader cults, including Ataturk, for example, and Masaryk from Czechoslovakia. And I think this really helps to put the whole cult of personality into a more reasonable perspective, historical perspective. And the third section enlarges the frame in which the Stalinist system is seen within the Cold War. So it expands it both chronologically and geographically. And then the book concludes with a sort of consideration of the now commonly voiced opinion that we hear in the West all the time, that Vladimir Putin's Russia is somehow blocked or held back by its, quote, inability to deal with the past. And also that in some sense, Putin is reestablishing Stalinism or even, rehabilitating Stalin. And that is what the book does. So what does the book say which is new or helpful or interesting? Well, plenty. And I suppose I'd want to single out three things. The important point that the cult of personality was in no way unique to Stalin or indeed to authoritarian systems, as is brought out well in several of the chapters, including the one on Judith Devlin, which I mentioned. The importance of looking beyond the simplistic Western caricature of Stalin as a paranoid, damaged, brutish villain, and taking him seriously as a politician who worked within a bureaucratic system, which of course was perfectly well able to function without him, or indeed without any cult of personality, in much the same way after his demise. And finally, the examination of the place of Stalin's Putin in Russia today, of Stalin in Putin's Russia today. So is a so-called rehabilitation of Stalin, or even a re-Stalinization, actually taking place, as is so often claimed? And here, I'm going to be a bit mean, and rather than give away the punchlines or steal the book's thunder, what I would suggest is that you go online to Bloomsbury Academic, order a copy for your students, your friends, or for yourself, and see what you think of the final conclusion and the epilogue, which brings it right up to date. So overall, revisioning Stalin and Stalinism, Complexities, Contradictions, and Controversies. It's accessible, engaging, it's a highly readable book, which will be very interesting and helpful to students, also to pupils, also to academics, and to general readers. So I really enjoyed reading it, and having thought I would just dip in and get a sense of it, I ended up reading the whole thing because it was so good.
Thank you, Mary. Those really kind words, Mary. What do I think the book is doing? Well, this is something that if we have time at the end of today's session, perhaps Jan and I might want to talk generally about the challenges of compiling an edited volume and the challenges of trying to create a coherent narrative or coherent sense of contribution in a collection of essays. In its simplest and broadest terms, I think what this book is trying to do is contained in the title, this notion of revisioning Stalin and Stalinism, which I know is going to divide opinion when the book does see the light of day. It already has in conference presentations that Susan and I have done pre-COVID, when we could actually go to conferences, where some people, including very big names in the field, have just asked us, why put the word revisioning into the title? It seems glib, or it seems unnecessary, or it seems somewhat provocative. But simply speaking, what we're trying to do in this book is foreground and emphasize the complexities of Stalin and Stalinism. Complexities that all too often, to the present day, are overlooked and reduced. And hopefully this book will help to keep those complexities and contradictions to the forefront of people's imaginations, and certainly to the minds of our students in years to come.